Good evening and good night, everyone. This is update for April 26, 2022, day 62, end of the date update. I will do a little deviation in interest of the new viewers who are just joining. There were questions about the unit sizes and just generally unit naming convention. So I'd like to quickly explain. If there is no letter to the unit, it means it's a brigade. Typical regular brigade has about 4.5 thousand people. There are smaller brigades, such as if you see a Russian AB, it means Airborne Brigade here. They tend to be small, around 3,000, and Naval Infantry Brigade NB. They also smaller in size. Then the letter T means tank, so 5TB means 5th Tank Brigade. So Ukrainian army is the core unit is brigade. For the Russian army, used to be brigade, and then during that, starting from about 2014, they started switching to the division level as a core unit of the army, but they still have a lot of brigades. So it's kind of becoming a hybrid, kind of like so it's caught in the middle of the process of migrating from brigades to division. And actually, originally it was divisions, then it was downgraded to brigades, and then it went back to the going back to divisions. So divisions tend to be typically around 10,000 people. However, airborne divisions, again, smaller in size, about 8,000 people in them. So, and then also SFB means Special Forces Brigade. This is a special Russian unit, and they tend to have, could be as low as 300 to 1,700 people in them. And then MC means military camp. That they actually differ. Some of them are brigade size, and some of them are division size. So, for example, 201 is division size, but 7MC and 4MC, they are brigade size units. Though those are Russian occupational units from Georgia and I think it's Kyrgyzstan, or basically from Central Asia. So now we briefly discussed that. Let's actually, and then in addition, there another peculiar kind of unit that Ukraine has are militia brigades. They tend to be about 3.4 thousand people in them. So since we are on the brigade topic, and BT means battalion. So there are standalone battalions in Ukrainian army, and Russia does not have as many of those. So in addition, we identified that there is also 7th Brigade from Kaliningrad, and we believe it's a coastal defense brigade, similar to 126 here. So it's operating somewhere on the front lines. We don't know for sure where they are. So, okay, we discussed the units. Let's switch. In addition, those who are following international volunteers, we identified that Finnish volunteers fighting in Kharkiv. There are the unit that we saw was like 15 people in them. We don't know any details why and anything else beyond that they're just fighting, and there are about 15 of them there. Now let's actually switch to strategic kind of topics, and then we're gonna move to walk through the front lines, and then we will answer 2 or 3 questions from the viewers. One of the questions was our opinion on the losses from both sides, and kind of provide estimates, what we think about that. And then I will try to follow up on some of the questions from oil and gas discussion from yesterday, as there were still some questions. So, and then maybe something, if there is any time, I may do a little bit more. But in order not to make this whole video too long, let's actually look at the strategic situation. So, rocket hits at the locomotive depots had immediate effect on Ukrainian logistical situation. So most of the passenger trains were canceled, and locomotives were diverted. Remaining locomotives were diverted to use to carry commercial, bulk goods, and also for military purposes. So if Russia continues this path, eventually they will, destroy enough of the locomotives so that the whole railroad system will be essentially stopped, and the effect is very immediate. In addition, Russia started attacking bridges, and they attacked specifically bridge here, which they believed that Ukraine was receiving supply of diesel fuel and gasoline from Moldova through the bridge. Somehow railroad goes here, so, and then it kind of goes probably to Odessa and then distributed in the south of Ukraine. So there was very kind of like a warning kind of attempt there. So definitely, so the response of Ukrainian side to this destruction of railroad network is actually is obviously relying on trucks, and the way it works is long haul trucks bring goods to, like, so for example, and we're talking specifically about military goods, right? So it's coming from Rzeszów, which is here in Poland, and some of it is actually from Slovakia, and then it's being transported to all of the logistical depots kind of more in central Ukraine, and then it's distributed, and it's all, commercial ones. So this is long haul commercial trucks, so you cannot distinguish it from the regular, it's from a regular commercial truck. They all look the same, and then the goods distributed to the depots in a central Ukraine here and more towards east, and then from there, delivered, and then from there they distributed by smaller trucks to actual front lines where they need it. So this system is kind of honestly pretty much bulletproof, and you cannot really destroy it. It is more expensive to run as a system than railroad transportation network, obviously, but this system still works, and it continue. It's almost like undestructible system. The only weak part in this whole system is actually Dnipro River, which cuts Ukraine essentially into two halves. And there are a bunch of bridges over, and it's wide river. It could be like up to 800 meters in length and 700 easily, up to some places even like up to 1,000 meters. And I'm not talking about this artificial lakes, which is obviously a totally different story. You don't want to even kind of discuss that part. But essentially, there is probably, and this is very guess. Like I didn't research, but it's at least 30 bridges or maybe 40 bridges across the Dnipro River, like for road transportation, right? And so that's obviously easily destructible by rocket hits. So far, Russia has not done that, but we think as the amount of weapons is increasing from the West, essentially Russia probably will resort to hitting destroying those bridges, because that will be a very strong hit to the whole logistical situation in Ukraine. So and speaking about the deliveries of weapons, so we've seen T-72 from Poland and Slovakia already on front lines. They were equipped with reactive air armor. So those are already on the front lines. And also US howitzers, 155 millimeter howitzers, M777, 777. I think half of them already in Ukraine, and the crews were trained, so they probably at this point going somewhere to the front lines, but only half of them. There is still another, and there are only 90 of them, so that's definitely not enough for it's too little. Hopefully it's not going to be too late, but it's definitely too little, and it's not enough to truly make immediate change in the situation. So, and then it seems like the Ukraine is going to be receiving additional 700 Switchblade UAVs, kamikaze UAVs. So, and there's clear indication that the weapons are flowing to Ukraine. Then there's another topic that is strategic importance, is this Transnistria. So there's clearly tension rising about this. And what it is, it's Moldova territory that was essentially annexed by Russia in 1992. They have their occupational forces there, similar to the 7MC, except it's about 2 or 3 battalion size units. So they obviously very weak. And the claims on the Russian side are that Ukraine and Romania are planning to distract, to take this annexed territory back. Basically, Romanian troops will come and Ukrainian troops come. So basically, from both sides, destroy this, and the territory will be returned to Moldova. This is how Russian kind of view on this, and there is clearly something is happening there because there are more explosions there today and so on. From Ukrainian point of view, is majority is not against it. Actually, there are many calls to do just that, and there is another, call it reward for Ukraine to do it. Russia has one of the largest ammunition depot somewhere here in this Transnistria. So there's definitely, Ukraine thinking about capturing that and using for its own needs, as there is a severe shortage of ammunition in general in Ukraine. So, and this definitely for very dangerous development. Let's put this way. Now, having said that, let's just switch. Let's do now walk through the front lines. And as we discussed before, the key in general, there were no progress at all that we could have seen. So everything, the front lines are static. There is intense fighting. There's soldiers are dying. Everything is usual. Intense artillery shelling and rocket hits and all that stuff. But the front lines have not changed. So and as a whole, for those who are new, the key point here is that Russian side is trying to encircle all of this. We call it Donbass salient, where there are a lot of Ukrainian units and they have very good defensive positions. They try to cut this off by encircling, by having northern pincer coming here and then southern pincer. They have a little bit more success with the northern pincer, which made some progress, and the southern made very little progress so far. So, but this is kind of strategic, the most important strategic location here. But now let's start work through the front lines in a clockwise fashion. We'll start from the north, from Kharkiv area, where we actually have updated map here. So as you can see here, portion of it is kind of goes along the state borders here. Then a Russian side is controlling this village of Kazacha Lopань, which was attacked by Ukrainian side a couple days ago and was a failed attack. Ukraine suffered some losses there. Otherwise, there is nothing really to report here except that one important thing to note here, that 144th Division has embedded in it 59th Tank Regiment, which is unusual for regular sort of infantry division to have in it. But they do as additional support. But this regiment suffered pretty heavy losses in the previous fightings here on these front lines. Otherwise, as you can see, there is no changes here. Now let's move towards south, and we're gonna look actually at the northern part of the Donbass salient, this northern pincer centered around Izyum. So here again, nothing really new. The only thing of importance is that Russian troops attempted counterattack towards Zavody, the village that was captured yesterday by Ukrainian side, but the counter attack failed, so Zavody is in Ukrainian hands. Here, mopping up operation of this bridgehead, Ukrainian bridgehead, on the eastern side of Siverskiy Donets River is really totally bogged down. There's no any progress as of today since yesterday. So there's clearly probably not enough troops, Russian troops here to really make a difference. So let's keep going in a clockwise fashion. Now we're going to look at the tip of this kind of iceberg, tip of this Donbass salient. It's a town of Severodonetsk, and there is a cluster of towns around it. And then there is also town of Popasna here. So those are places of very intense fighting. Here's Severodonetsk, and then there is kind of town next to it called Rubizhne. This is a big chemical industrial complex of Ukraine, used to be located here. At this point, everything is destroyed, so there's nothing really left there. And then also even in Lysychansk, there used to be oil refinery here. So this is basically like one big chemical industrial complex, like kind of cluster here for Ukraine. But at this point, everything is destroyed here. So after capturing this village of Novotoshkivsky yesterday, Russian troops are kind of consolidating. It's unclear that it looks like there is a fighting going on around the village of Orykhova, and it seems to be that it's controlled, or basically majority of it is controlled by Russian troops, but it is unclear where the front line goes here. Beyond that, in addition, we forgot to mention, we identified another brigade that is part of the 2nd Army Corps. It's the 7th Brigade. So just another unit that we identified there. So, and then Popasna is located a little bit down south here. So there is also intense fighting there, but there are no changes. Ukrainian side holds about 40% of Popasna, and then Ukrainian side, and there is another place for intense fighting is Rubizhne, where actually, let's look at this. Russian side controls majority of it. I don't know, let's call it 80%, and Ukrainian side controls remaining 20% of this town, or what remains of that town, because it's basically a little Stalingrad here. Everything is a rubble. So this is a look at the Popasna that we mentioned. Again, Russia controls the kind of this one. So this town has a 2 passenger railroad station. So Russia controls one, and the second one is in Ukrainian hands, and there is also a plant here, and this is a railroad depot here. So they kind of control the southern part of kind of east and south of the city, and Ukraine controls kind of northeastern part of the town. But no new changes here. Now we're gonna this stretch of the front line is actually quiet since the beginning of the war, which is kind of very amazing and surprising. And then let's actually look here directly west of Donetsk, because there is intense fighting going on there, and there's no changes in the direction of Russian attack. It's always Avdiivka, and there's no progress there. And it's always in Marinka, and again, there's no progress there. And the third one is Novomikhailivka, which is essentially kind of like tiny salient that Russian side wants to completely kind of eliminate and capture encircle troops there. So that's a situation here immediately west of Donetsk. And now let's actually look this stretch from called Vasilivka to Vuhledar. So we call it like Zaporizhia front line, basically here. So let's actually look at the specific small stretch in this area here between Vuhledar, village of Novosilivka and town called Gulyaypole. So basically this is this area. We're going to look at that situation there, because that's actually an area of southern pincer. That's where it's going to be coming. That's where this is the main axis of the Russian attack from the south to connect from the northern pincer and encircle these troops here. So as we shown yesterday, there's no any news of progress. Everything kind of stays the same. Based on our information, Russian troops have not made any more progress here. So it looks like Ukrainian side plugged this kind of tiny salient that Russian troops created. So otherwise situation, but there is intense fighting here. So it's not quiet. It's fighting, but the front line's more or less static here. So now let's look quickly at Mariupol. We're not even sure at this point if it's even worth discussing, because it's very situation is very clear. Ukraine cannot cannot militarily save Ukrainian defenders there. Technically, those defenders can stay there forever if they have supply of ammunition, food, water, and medical supplies, because they have a lot of wounded, and we've seen pretty depressing pictures that they cannot be treated. There is not enough, and they basically losing their legs, arms, and all of that stuff because they rot and things like that. So at this point, the breakout attempt, because the perimeter is relatively small at this point, so there's enough density of Russian troops around it to prevent effective breakout attempt. So at this point, chances are extremely low to get out sort of safely out of this place for Ukrainian side. But we do know some of their sort of smaller units. We actually found out that today that managed to escape from successfully without any problems in small size groups at the end of March. So we can definitely put this as a sort of yardstick that end of March it was relatively easy to escape from Mariupol. So that we probably will be not gonna even discuss it unless there are some news in the future. Let's now look at the situation here, which is, let's call it Mykolaiv Kherson front line, stretch of the front line. And the significance of it is that it protects this channel that brings fresh water to Crimea and effectively makes Crimea economy viable and actually supports the population. Otherwise, the number of people that are there are not supportable with the local supply of fresh water. So, as we mentioned before, this whole big bridgehead is going to be critical for Russian side to defend, as it protects this channel. And obviously, this is also critical because it's a bridgehead on the other side of Dnipro River, which is a major barrier for Russian troops in general. For anyone who is coming from the east, it's a major barrier in Ukraine. So now they establish pretty significant bridgeheads, so they can, they want to capture Odessa for sure. They want to make a bridge to Transnistria, and then they want to capture Kryvyi Rih, and obviously, if everything goes well, kind of continue their attack to capture entire Ukraine. So this is important, area for them. So let's look here again. The same situation, kind of like sides exchanging the blow. Ukrainians side attempts attack. Gets pushed back, has losses. Russian side does the same, attempts attack, gets pushed back, losses. So it's all just a tactical, like just fighting to improve tactical positions. Really no any major changes, no new units. So it's kind of situation stable, meaning both sides intensely fighting, but there are no changes in the front lines here. So now we're done with the front lines. So maybe we can address, like, we can share our opinion. So we just want to make it clear it's opinion, because there is it's opinion about the losses on both sides and the ratio of losses on the both sides. It is actually possible to get somewhat say decent or somewhat more factual number, but it will require a lot of manpower to go through a lot of information in terms of collecting information on that fallen soldiers from both sides. So that's just really big, would be really big effort. We don't have resources for that. So from our perspective, the losses on both sides are roughly in a ratio 1-to-1. So basically, Ukrainian losses, this is in terms of dead and wounded, are about the same. In terms of prisoners of war, Russia definitely has more. We think it's probably pushing towards 3,000 because of the surrender of Ukrainian 36th Brigade, or majority of it, let's put this way, in Mariupol, where there were about like 1,400 soldiers surrendered about 2 weeks ago. So that's Ukraine probably has like slightly less than 1,000 prisoners of war, and as of recently, Ukrainian side essentially didn't capture almost anyone, as Russian side is not does not have many failures or does not give opportunities for Ukrainian side to capture prisoners of war. So there are exchanges of prisoners of war. We were aware of about like 5 or 6 exchanges. They kind of they really usually opaque and not much publicity around them. We don't even know exactly number of them. So that kind of tells us there is a lot of, call it, corruption centered around this. And usually this exchange is about like 50 to 80 people in each exchange. So that's kind of what's going on in terms of the number of the dead soldiers on both sides. I believe it's between 10 to 15,000, probably 12, 13,000 on each side. And then in terms of wounded, you can multiply it by roughly 3. So that kind of gives you a number of the wounded. So if it's like, let's say 12, so it's going to be like 36,000. So, and if you add again this 12, so it's roughly each side lost about 50,000 of soldiers. Ukraine obviously getting them through conscripts and just general volunteers. There's no shortage of basically people from militia kind of flow. It's kind of like natural replacement for the main regular units. So there is so far no problem in terms of manpower for Ukraine to replace these losses. For Russia, it's a little bit more difficult situation. They certainly were able to replace, in our estimate, at least half of these losses for sure from them. So basically, they were like a class of conscripts that were finishing. They were supposed to be released from the army in April of this year, and there are about like 140,000 of them. And we believe that about at least 25,000 of them were willing to sign the contract and go fight. But they're also just generally probably volunteers. So, in our opinion, Russian side has a problem with replenishing all of these losses that they suffered to the full extent. And there is a good chance that they have fewer troops on the front lines right now than what they had when they started on February 24. And it's obviously part of the reason why the front line shrunk, right? So because they just simply don't have enough resources to pursue all goals that they would like to. So that's and in terms of like why ratio 1-to-1, in our opinion, is it's kind of like situation is following. Typically, those who attack suffer higher losses. However, what sort of compensates that on the Ukrainian side is there is a lot of militia, which has essentially zero training. And we see a lot of kind of like rookie mistakes that they do. and because of that, there is very high casualty rate there. So it kind of compensates like Russian higher losses, because as attackers, then you have high losses among Ukrainian militia. This situation probably will essentially the situation kind of like change. It is dynamic. It's not static. First of all, it also needs to be understood. So this was true, very true at the beginning of the war, especially like first months. Situation kind of like evens out right now in terms of majority of the militia start to get at least some basic understanding, training, and so on. So the losses are probably going down, and the Russian troops also becoming kind of call it more intelligent in terms of how they attack. Now they heavily rely on artillery, aviation support, rockets. So before they attack, they shell it well at the slightest targets they see. Even if they just suspect something, they shell. So there's totally no this brings another point. And people were thinking there's a shortage of ammunition in Russia. There's totally no shortage. They shoot at just even suspected targets where they suspect something, like some location that like seems like could be like really good, like observation point or something. They just shell it, just kind of like to make sure. So they totally don't have any shortages, and that helps them to kind of soften defenses. Not always helpful, but it helps in terms of reducing number of losses among Russian troops. And now they don't attack in this kind of like long dumb columns as they did before that are perfect targets, and they kind of like more attacking in sort of like normal way. So so basically both sides kind of like becoming sort of call it more intelligent. So the ratio probably roughly is still like 1-to-1. So that's kind of like our logic about this. So second question was again was about the oil and gas, and we forgot to mention that there is also deposits of natural gas in a shale, in a Black Sea shale here in Ukraine. Allegedly there is probably economically recoverable and some quantity, because actually Romania is Ukraine is a neighbor and it's the same shale, same geology. So Romania discovered some oil and natural gas deposit of their in the offshore on their shale, and they actually do extract it in sort of productive. There is a production basically economically viable. So there is good chance that that's possible for Ukraine. But at this moment, that's obviously out of the question, as the whole Black Sea is blocked by Russian side. And that actually brings another economic question that, and by the way, those, the how to say, licenses for the shale exploration were given to ExxonMobil during Yanukovych time, which was like 2011, 2012. So those licenses probably expired at this moment because, they explored, but it was too much of sort of corruption in the country. And basically this oil majors, they didn't want to kind of commit giving, seeing how much corruption is going on at that time. And we're not gonna say that this is the situation with corruption got much better. It's pretty bad in Ukraine, and actually that's another part why Ukraine is not self-sustainable in terms of energy supply, because potentially it can produce enough natural gas from the older deposits if they were all kind of like privatized, and there's official owner, there's no corruption, no theft, but it's most majority of it is owned by the government, and it's totally bad owner, and as a result the production was falling even before the war. And then they even made like economic policies that are totally insane and actually self-destructive, where they increase the taxes to the point of like about like 60% of the 60 or 70% of the profit is given to the government. So you can imagine there's almost no incentive for the private party to participate in this. So as a result, this whole oil and gas industry is in total mess in Ukraine. And that's like really shooting yourself in the head what's being done there. And these policies were just recently after the war started. So it kind of tells about a lot about the economic block of Ukrainian government, which is, in our opinion, is terrible. That was about the oil and gas, and there's another problem brewing, and that's economic problem, is actually with agricultural production. So what's happening is because it's Ukraine is a large wheat and generally grains producer, and that's a bulk good that's being exported to international markets through the sea, and obviously through the railroads, which again getting destroyed as well. But the sea already blocked. So what that creates is the prices for all of the grains went down significantly in Ukraine. So that creates significant disincentive for farmers to actually plant, because essentially there is no export outlet, and Ukraine obviously doesn't need as much wheat and all of the other grains. So that kind of creates a situation when the production will probably drop significantly. Production growth drops significantly, especially if you put yourself in the hand in a feet of the farmer. There is a war, and you need to invest your working capital, right? By buying seeds, fuel, everything, fertilizer and stuff. And if it's uncertain times, you probably want to kind of be very careful about it. So that really creates kind of really kind of like a storm in terms of all of the incentives for the farmers are pointing in the direction, okay, reduce production, preserve your working capital and try to survive, see what's going to happen in the future. So there is a potential problem brewing there, but that will be more apparent probably sometime in August if, regardless, even if the war stops at this point, the planting season is close to be over, or almost over. So this kind of set in motion regardless of the course of the war. So that's it. Hopefully it's not terribly long, and I appreciate everyone's support, and thank you for watching. Until tomorrow, thanks again. Bye bye.